Ladies and gentlemen, we made it to the Astros farm system here on the call up. Arm Layton, Jack McMullen. This is the last full farm system breakdown until next year. We're going to do a bunch of updates through this offseason. And then when it's time to really, I think, shake them all up again completely, we'll do the walkthrough of, the top 15, just like we're doing with this. But this episode here signifies the shift over here to the end of season updates, where then we will fly through probably multiple systems every single episode and just highlight the biggest movers. Of course, as we go into 2026, it'll be a little bit different and we'll do the top 15s all over again. But we wanted to do a little bit of an end of season update for all the other systems and recognize the biggest movers. That said, this is one last top 15 here, and we did not save the best for last. But there are Astros fans out there who have been waiting for this, and there are people who want to know about all 30 farm systems. So I don't want to make the episode less interesting at the 1 minute mark.
No, there are certainly enough prospects to make this intriguing for the Houston Astros. So much of their success is coming at the major league level, but they have reinforcements on the way. Zach Cole is a guy that has come up and hit immediately, and Cole has been very good so far this year. There are other guys. AJ Blubaugh looks like a very solid swingman for them. There are pieces that can help complement one of the best teams in Major League Baseball year in and year out within this farm system.
Yeah, and Cole is a guy we'll talk about in the names to watch. I almost put him in the top 15. I have some concern about whether he's going to be able to hit enough, and we're going to talk about that. But we talked about him in the Just Baseball show. The perfect microwave guy to bring up because the power is so immense. We'll get there in a second. And he's been awesome right out of the gate to help them. One other thing, I'm chomping at the bit to talk about Trey Savage's debut. We're going to talk a little bit more about Bryce Eldridge, all that good stuff. That'll be on tomorrow's episode in the heat sheet with Elijah Evans. We'll do a little bit of a check-in as well on just players that got promoted. Savage, it was, and again, I don't want Astros fans to be like, I'm here for the Astros system. The one thing I want to say was the Savage debut, not exactly what we've been talking about on here, about just that vertical tunnel and how when he sets it up with the fastball, how the other two pitches just work phenomenally off of it.
He looks physically uncomfortable throwing a pitch, and that is why it works.
And that tunnel, man, if you can execute, it's so much fun. We'll get into the names to watch here in this Astro system, which starts with Yancel Villarreal, catcher / corner outfielder. I think he's probably going to end up making the move off the catching position, but if he could catch, even part-time, I think that helps his outlook. This could be like that David Frey type of player that I bring up so often, but there's only like one David Frey, and I actually really want to see this archetype blossom more. But usually those guys are just not good enough to even justify the part-time catching. We'll see if Villarreal can do that. It's short levers, which sometimes doesn't correlate with bat speed, but he actually has a little bit more bat speed than you'd expect. Decent bat to ball, so I think that gives him sneaky pop. It's going to be a matter of how much power he taps into because the bat really leads the way. But there is a potential for, an average blend of hit and power here, which I think can provide some intrigue if he's able to catch a couple of times a week. Maybe you can make him a platoon guy, something like that. 87% in zone contact rate in 2025 will absolutely play, though.
And you know what? He walks a lot. So you pair good plate discipline with that zone contact. That feels good.
Yeah, he could be a decent bench piece for you. Next guy is Alonzo Treadwell, a name that we've heard, a bit over the years, but just has not been able to stay healthy. A second-round pick by the Astros in 2023. He's just been hurt a bunch, and this has probably been one of his healthier years, and I think that's been the encouraging side of it. He's a big guy, 6'7", 270 pounds, and he's been finishing the year quite strong in Double-A. You look at the last 7 starts of the season, winding it down in Double-A, a 3.18 ERA. He struck out 38.5% of batters while walking 11.5%. Nothing jumps off the page stuff-wise, but I think he creates a unique angle at 6'7", with some sneaky ride, and he gets plus extension. So that fastball, like the run and ride with the extension, it just seems like it gets on hitters a little bit more quickly than you think. And he was able to grab a little bit more velocity as the season progressed. I like the downer curveball from the higher release point, and then the slider is a little bit of a work in progress. He could be a back-end starter, and, he's built for it at 6'7". It's just going to be a matter of staying healthy and being able to compile more innings.
Good classic SoCal guy too. Went to Mater Dei in Santa Ana and then went to UCLA as well. His first year at UCLA, he was amazing. Punched out 62 and walked 6. That was in a relief role. And then he pivots to the rotation. It was really good as a reliever at UC or as a starter at UCLA.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're just hoping he can build on. But again, availability has been a big part of that for Treadwell, who I do think will need to be added to the 40-man. No, not this year. It'll probably be in a year after this one. I'm not
I
positive.
think at the end of 26.
At the end of 26. Okay, so he'll be okay because that would be all of a sudden a little bit of a more interesting conversation because of the way that he finished the year.
Yeah.
Next guy, fourth round pick, in 2024 out of Rice, Parker Smith. So the Astros really volatile on the offensive side of things. I think with the pitching, they do go for some of their stuffy, guys. I don't think as much though. I think you see more of the back end type of rotation starters that they seem to target, which is funny because it's far off from the offensive side of things where I think they go almost too volatile. I welcome volatility. It's implied in the prospect world, but we'll get to some of the bats. It's a little crazy. Next guy is Parker Smith, who I really feel like fits the bill of that back end of the rotation type of starter if it all works out. And it's funny because when you look at the pitching side for the most part, I feel like they go on the safer side, the Astros, that is, when you look at the way that they kind of approach their targets and the arms that they go after. And then we're going to talk about the hitters, like on the offensive side of things, maybe almost a little bit too volatile. But Parker Smith fits the bill as that potential 5-starter ground ball getter and fourth round pick out of Rice. They've went a little bit more slowly with him, I think, in his progression, given that he's a college arm and 22 years old. But I think that was because coming out of Rice, not the SEC, they slowly develop him a little bit more. And I imagine that they can push him a bit more aggressively in 2026. But I thought he did a lot of things well this year. He got a lot of ground balls, 53% ground ball rate. It's a heavy sinker at 92, 94, and was thrown a little bit harder as the year progressed. Changeup looks like it could be a really good pitch for him, and the slider is a work in progress, but he also has the four-seamer. It can buzz up. I think he has a decent shot at landing as that innings-eating 5-starter and a sturdy 6'2", 230. He seems like that could be a nice outcome for him.
Every farm system needs that safe back end rotation guy that nothing screams sexy, but also nothing screams it can get away from you and cause an 8-run start.
Exactly. And then you go to the next guy. This is one of the few volatile arms in this farm system, Alimber Santa. We talked about him during a really hot stretch that he had this year because at 22 years old, already reaching AAA as a reliever. This is a guy that I think the Astros are looking at and saying, if he can hone in on the command a little bit more, he could help us at the big league level soon. And I think maybe at some point this year, they're thinking maybe he can come up and help us. I just think the command hasn't totally been there for him, especially since he got to AAA. You look at his last 20 appearances, he's walked 20% of batters. He's also struck out 35% of batters, but you're obviously going to need to improve upon that. Fastball averages 96, can get up to 99 with some life to it. And then adding a sinker really helped him. And then he also has this improved sweeper that has been a wipeout pitch for him. So it's been a great year for him, considering it was a 6.47 ERA in 2024. And then adding that sinker sweeper has allowed him to pitch to a low 1s ERA this season. It's actually even more remarkable that he's done that despite ridiculous walk rates.
These guys are my favorite because all it takes is throwing the ball in the strike zone and the stuff is going to beat everybody, but they're also my least favorite because the only thing missing is them throwing the ball within the strike zone.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden you watch them and it's like, oh my God, I love this. But I also hate this because you're doing something that you wish, there's just a major hurdle. It is the biggest hurdle. And again, this is the conversation with every 12-year-old little leaguer, just throw strikes. With him, it really is just throw strikes, and he could be not Brian Abreu Jr., but he could be a leverage arm for them very, very quickly, and they do a good job of spawning guys.
Good news is 22 years old, so has plenty of time, even though he's already at the AAA level. But definitely looks like, at the least, even if he's not throwing enough strikes, a solid, middle relief, volatile option there. I want to make sure I say this name right, and I'm curious what you think. Jackson Neza or Neza?
I would bet Neza. I have no idea.
Yeah, so Jackson Neza, another guy that's turned in a pretty decent year. And again, the stuff doesn't really jump off the page, but the more I watched, the more I liked, and started to think about pushing him closer towards that top 15 range. He gets plus vert on a fastball that's 92 to 94, and then his changeup played up because of that verty fastball. So the shape may not be that, above average pitch, but it plays up to above average because of that, getting 10 inches of vertical separation and 13 miles per hour of velocity separation. So that's kind of the 1-2 punch there for him. And then it's just trying to find a more consistent third pitch. He's gone to a sweeper and a cutter, both of which have not been very good for him. So I think he's probably a guy that's just more of a pronator, and he hasn't really found that pitch that he can spin with consistency to give him that third offering. So is it, finding another changeup too and playing with a split and kind of Trevor Richardsing this thing and seeing what that looks like, or hoping that he can find something with that cutter or sweeper? I don't know. But overall, he turned in a really solid finish to the year. Last 10 starts, he pitched to a 4.03 ERA in AA once he came back from injury, and 20% strikeout rate, 8% walk rate. Those are all serviceable numbers. He looks like he could at least be a depth arm.
It's funny, man. Like brutal college numbers, an ERA at 6.25 in 108 college innings. Started at Florida State, was not great as a reliever, then transferred to Louisiana Lafayette. Was a full-time starter at a 6 ERA in his draft year. He had the best summer ball experience ever. He played for the Martha's Vineyard Sharks in 2021, and in 30 innings, he K'd 49 and walked 3.
Wow.
Being good on Martha's Vineyard is that seems like a dream of a college summer.
Yeah, that maybe reinvigorated the love for him, I imagine. But yeah, it's just another guy though, where it's an example. And the Astros do this really well. We talk about the Mariners who do it really well. There's a few other orgs that do it really well. Drafting players who have pitchers who have terrible results in college and turn them into players that have much better results professionally. You just see it so frequently on the pitching side relative to the offensive side of things. Jace Mitchell is the next name, 7th round pick in the 2025 draft. The Astros signed him from the University of Kentucky with an overslot $800,000 signing, which is like triple the slot value. So they probably gave him close to third, fourth round money, third round money, something around that. Right? I actually, the more I was able to watch him, which isn't a ton, the more I like though. Offensively, there's some really intriguing components here. Now he may outgrow the catcher position and end up at first base, but there's some impressive bat speed and a good feel to hit, I think, for a 6'3", 200-pound kid already. So you just have a sweet left-handed swing with some potential there. And if he moves off the catching position, I think they were really just snagging a bat that they liked here, in the later rounds that they had some money to allocate towards.
So his slot was on par with the 96th overall pick, which was middle of the third round.
Okay, that makes sense. So I like it. I think it's an interesting upside play for them, and a guy that, the swing looks pretty advanced already for where he is at.
Yep.
James Hicks, next name, right-hander who is funky. And I think that funkiness has helped him turn in a pretty solid season overall. Missed some time with injury. The Yankees are real bad with it. The Astros may be even worse in terms of not disclosing any minor league injury. Like you won't even get like upper body, lower body sometimes with the Astros. And so a lot of undisclosed injuries. But with James Hicks, this is a guy that came back and I think turned in a pretty good stretch. The cumulative numbers may not be as good as I think the game by game basis looks. He had a 4.55 ERA in those 7 starts, excuse me. It was 29 2/3 innings, but there's some intrigue here as a guy that I think absolutely could be weird enough to just make it work in a relief setting, and at the very least in a middle relief setting. His fastball plays up from that crossfire delivery in the low release at 73% strike rate, 31% chase rate. Opponents at 207 against that fastball this year, and he's able to really locate it to all 4 quadrants well. So he can go fastball heavy and just look really weird, and I think make that work. Then he has a sinker working off of that. So just having the pair of fastballs, I think you can kind of do the all 4 quadrant thing, be effective that way. Then it's just kind of finding which of the secondaries is going to be the best pitch for him. The slider got hammered. The changeup got hit pretty hard, and the cutter was all right. But again, I have confidence that the fastballs are going to work, and they did this year. It's just going to be, what else does he have off of that? Maybe he can have this like Lance Lynn type of approach, but we'll see.
And how hard is the fastball? Is it like mid 90s, low 90s?
It's 92 on average, but it's weird, man. Like it's with 23% in zone whiff rate, which is about 8%, maybe 7% above average.
Yeah.
And
Plays
then
up.
it just plays up. So we'll
Cool.
see if he can make it work. Jose Fleury is the next name. He signed for $10,000 in 2021. And this is the copy paste the Trevor Richards thing. This might be an even better example of that. Like Fleury, he's sitting 90 with his fastball. It's 90 to 91. And it's not really impressive from a shape perspective, but for whatever reason, between double and triple A this year, guys didn't really hit his four-seam fastball very well. It allowed a 181 batting average and a 570 OPS. The sinker got hit a little bit harder, but he throws the four-seamer way more frequently. And I think the big reason why is his changeup. His changeup is a potential plus pitch. It's like a screwball action at 79 miles per hour. He has a phenomenal command for it. 67% strike rate. Opponents at 170 against it, despite the fact that he threw it 32% of the time. It's just really tough for hitters to pick up. He commands the heck out of it, and he could do that like Tommy Kahnle type of thing, where I think he could just throw it the majority of the time if he's coming out of the pen. But what's amazing is, again, that four-seamer worked. It was effective for him, and he mixes in, an okay cutter as well. So the way I looked at it, because of the way that he can mix in all these other offerings, like he'll go cutter, slider, sinker, curveball, sweeper. None of them are great besides really the changeup. It did remind me a little bit of Valente Belloso, who was a former Astros farmhand.
Yeah, interesting. I also have Fleury here as the pronunciation. Yeah, Jose Fleury. So a little bit more flavor on that. But I'm looking at the numbers between AA and AAA. I mean, 10 starts in AA to 1.8, and then 40 innings in AAA to 6.9.
Yeah.
I wonder if this guy was hammered by the environment, because like the Texas League, there are some ballparks there that are very, very hitter friendly, but I guess in the PCL, every single one is very hitter friendly. I would be curious to know like how much environment played into his struggles at AAA this year.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. It's funny though, because when I look at the pitch by pitch since he got to AAA, it doesn't even look like any of the offerings were getting hammered particularly worse than they were, in AA. So it just seems like the long ball burning him a little bit more. And then he the last time out walked 5, which was a little uncharacteristic for him. So we'll see if he can make that adjustment to the PCL, but obviously that's going to be a big part of it too, if he can be that depth arm or change up heavy guy that you plug and play here and there.
Yep.
Zach Cole, who's doing it at the big league level now, is that perfect microwave type that we talked about. I mean, he has some of the best raw exit velocities in all of minor league baseball. Now, Major League Baseball, it was an EV90 of 110 miles per hour. And trust me, it pained me to put one of the best EV90s in all of professional baseball, really, especially in the minor leagues, not in the top 15 here. But I mean, he's striking out 35% of the time. Yeah. And that's the challenge. A lot of whiff, but I just don't know if you can get by on a 35% strikeout rate. What does help is he plays a good corner. He's an above average runner, but if it's close to 20 hit tool, I don't know if that's going to work. So far it has. What I think is encouraging is that he can maybe just hit righties. And I think they've been trying to deploy him in more positions for success. Against lefties, his strikeout rate's 37%. Against righties, it creeps down a little bit more. But there's no doubting that this guy has elite raw power and is a good athlete in the corner.
Is this their James Outman?
Which just means you just ride it as long as you can.
Yeah, exactly. Keep the hot hand and then dump him off in a weird trade with Minnesota at some point.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I hope something clicks for him up there and he's able to hit more than you think. But it's pretty unprecedented to have 35% K rate in the upper minors, and especially in the PCL, and then cut that down below that. But even if he's K'ing 32, 33% of the time, he hits the ball hard enough and provides enough value in the corner where he could be just that bulk platoon or just platoon bat that is frustrating at times. But when he's hot, he can play, I think, well beyond his means, when you see the end of the season production.
Gotcha.
Last guy, Luis Baez, one time a top 100 candidate or top 100 prospect by, I think, us and several other outlets. It just has not aged well for him. It's been tough because I think injuries have hurt him for sure. And then I think just an approach that really undercut him as he went to more challenging levels. Then also you pair the fact that it's either a below average outfield or first base that also is frustrating. The power is still plus from the raw department, but he has 2 homers in 67 games this year, which is also a shocking
He had 21
development.
homers last year in just over 100 games.
So just a lot of things are off. And the 35% chase rate doesn't help. So you're not giving up on the kid yet because he's 21 years old and the batted ball, impact is there from an EV perspective, but clearly a huge step backwards and a frustrating year between the injuries, between the struggles, the lack of improvement defensively as well. He's just going to need to make a lot of gains this offseason, but he easily can. We see it all the time from guys going from age 21 to 22. But he's got a lot of things he needs to shore up. And I am concerned that he's just never going to be able to recognize spin well enough, which has always been a big issue for him.
Got you.
Into the top 15, Shay Whitcomb, which it's just funny ranking a player like this in the top 15, but he's just a high floor player relative to some of the others that we're comparing to. And he struggled to hold on to that 26-man roster spot with the Astros, but he's been up and down a little bit. He's also just clearly too good for the PCL at the same time. He's played all over, but it's this similar situation to like when we talk about Justin Foscue. He's more defensively versatile than him, but where it's like, okay, he's played some different spots, but he's not really good at any of them. I think he could be a solid second baseman, but like he's playing some shortstop. He's not very good there. He's playing some third base. He's not very good there. You could absolutely play left field, and especially at his home ballpark in Houston, but it's not particularly great there. It's kind of like the Spencer Steer type of thing as well. But he has added more power and continued to add more power, and I think that's what helps him carve out a role. And he's an above average runner. So if you have a guy that you can plug at least into a bunch of different spots and can give you above average pop, I still think he's a guy that fills a bench role pretty nicely.
A lot of teams would really love having a Shay Whitcomb. The problem is the better version of Shay Whitcomb is Mauricio Dubon. So the Astros are okay without Shay Whitcomb. We've talked about it a lot. We just talked about it on the Just Baseball show the other day. Jose Caballero kind of solidifying the Yankee shortstop situation. Caballero was the new answer to everybody wants Edmundo Sosa. Everybody wants Jose Caballero. And the Yankees happened to get him at the trade deadline. Every team wants Mauricio Dubon. And Shay Whitcomb can absolutely be some team's Mauricio Dubon. Problem is, he's in the same organization as Mauricio Dubon is. Yeah. And this is a common guy. I mean, Alex Freeland is a better version of Shay Whitcomb, but Freeland fills a very similar role to that of Shay Whitcomb. So, yeah, I mean, like, there's probably another team out there that is looking for that super utility bench guy, not super utility bench guy, because super utilities are guys that are starters.
And the thing with Dubon is like he's such a good defender, and with Whitcomb, like it's just not great, but maybe it's just good enough to get by at each of those positions, and you still have that value there. If he could make some more strides defensively, it would really help his case. But either way, I still think the ability to move around and the power is something that a lot of teams I think could utilize, especially second division teams, and he'll be hanging around for a while.
Yep.
14 is Ethan Frey, and Frey has big time raw power as well. They just took him in the 3rd round of the 2025 draft. Not as much of the track record as some of the other college bats that you'll see, that got drafted this past year because of injury, but he put up some crazy numbers at LSU. This is just, it's frustrating because you see plus raw power, and just, I don't know if he has the ability to get into it in games just yet. The swing gets long and it can flatten out, and I think that's hampered some of the game power for him. But he did finish the year strong in low A. They assigned him to low A, played 26 games there, put up really good numbers, and sprinted through the finish line, hit 2 home runs in his last 3 games, a 4-hit performance there as well. I think the fact that he hits the ball as hard as he does makes him intriguing. And then he's not a total slouch of a runner, helps his case, because he's not the best defender. Because he came back from injury, he didn't really even get to play defense. He was mostly DHing at LSU as well, coming off of a shoulder issue. And I'm hoping that the further he gets removed from that shoulder surgery, maybe he's able to find the angles and the slots better to create a little bit more loft and shorten up that swing. But this is a fun project to bring in here in the third round as a guy that can hit the ball as high as 114 miles per hour. If he can just clean up the swing a little bit, this is a fun bat first profile that, at least I think could be a short platoon masher type.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned the good numbers at LSU. He had 331 in 62 games with 13 homers, and he didn't punch out much. He had a 1061 OPS. Then he hit 330 in those 26 games that you mentioned in low A Fayetteville. He also walked 20 times in 26 games. So he got almost better from a walk rate perspective in pro ball after SEC play. And obviously there are other guys that you're circling at LSU, but like a 15% walk rate in pro ball is a 15% walk rate.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is recognizing spin really well. And my concern is the swing is longer, so against fastballs, he seems to cheat a little bit more and gets more expansive. But he seems to recognize the spin pretty well, so that's hopefully something that can work to his favor, especially as he develops more and shores up that swing. We're going to get to number 13, which is Bryce Mayer in a moment. Before that, our first break. All right, right-hander Bryce Mayer, who I have seen as high as the top 10, I think, with some outlets, and I can understand why. This is where you start to get to the arms that it's not sexy in this system, but they're going to fill a big league role one way or another, or they're going to be complementary trade pieces going in other directions. And this is where the Astros do stockpile a fair amount of these types. And Bryce Mayer, 16th rounder in 2024, he pitched to a 6.58 ERA out of the bullpen in Missouri. And then that was after he transferred from like St. Charles Junior College. Another example, though, it's just been better in pro ball. And I know from a run prevention standpoint, the way he finished the year, and also, I don't know if it was an innings limit thing or whatever, but we didn't see him throw after the 13th. Of course, they're not going to let us know about that. But 4.11 ERA between low A, high A, and double A this season, a 3.24 FIP, 30% strikeout rate, and a 7% walk rate. Struck out 112 in 87 and 2/3 innings. I think that's obviously really encouraging off of a guy that was like struggling out of the Missouri bullpen. Fastball looks like an above average pitch with good carry and gets good swing and miss numbers in the zone. And then the slider looks like an above average offering. So those two pitches alone, I feel like give him a chance to be a middle reliever, swingman type if it doesn't work out. Obviously, more time to develop here. Maybe the curveball comes along a little bit further. Maybe he's able to find a changeup, and you can look into a back end of the rotation arm here too as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to give him every opportunity to start, right? Like I made 5 appearances out of the pen this year, but in 87 and 2/3 innings, he was pounding the strike zone, which is just phenomenal. So, no, man, it's exciting stuff with this guy, and you feel like the command being where it is at 50 grade, you would assume that he can stick as that back end of the rotation guy. Although mid reliever with good command, you feel pretty good about having one of those irons in the fire, and that is a Major League Baseball player for at least 6 years.
Yeah, and that's where it's like the swingman, spot start, mid reliever, just Swiss Army knife, might be up and down a little bit more than you think. That's kind of that 40 to 40 plus future value, but he got the plus because I think you have some time here to maybe iron some more things out and see what more is in the tank, because he hasn't had a lot of runway really as a starter, and he hasn't really had a lot of success just as a pitcher, period. So I think this was a good year for him to build on.
Yep.
Ethan Pecko is number 12, and there's a lot of copy paste here, I think, with these pitcher types, and trying to separate them was interesting. Pecko, a little bit more of a track record of just throwing with success professionally, and that really good finish to the year, and a guy that probably could be justifiably a little bit higher on this list as well. Feel very good about his chances of filling a big league role, whether it be in that swingman or depth role. But now it seems like he's pushing closer to that 5-starter potential. I think he was their minor league pitcher of the year last year. Is that correct?
I think that's right.
I'm trying to remember, but regardless, final 2 appearances of the season, assuming maybe he gets one more in here, but last 2 appearances in AAA. Actually, let me extend this. Last 5 starts in AAA, he has pitched to a 1.88 ERA, 24 innings. He's allowed just 1 home run in the PCL, 31 strikeouts, 8 walks. Is a 32% strikeout rate, 8% walk rate. He's been fantastic, and I think that's been encouraging given the fact that I think he missed a little bit of time early in the year, got a late start, and the velo has built up as the year has progressed. So when I did the video dive, the fastball was more 93, 94, but the last 4 starts for him, the fastball has been more 94, 96. So it just shows you how fluid these things are, especially on the pitching side with the prospects. Like if I saw more 94, 96, I probably would have bumped him up a little bit higher. But this was finished again before the last few starts of his. The cutter is a really good pitch from him. And now that that's closer to 90, it's playing closer to a plus pitch. And then that fastball, it's average, but now it's playing closer to above average. So those two pitches set the tone, and then he mixes in, an average slider and then two fringy pitches that if one of those can come along, the curveball or the changeup, I think you've got a well-rounded mix here that could plug in as a 5-starter.
Yeah, it seems like it, and I'm just like doing the little itsy bitsy dive right now. He was the Astros minor league pitcher of the year last year. And yeah, like that tick up is encouraging, especially off the cutter too, because if you have 3 pitches and you command those 3 pitches, and like I understand the cutter and the slider kind of fit into the same shape window, that's okay. If they're different enough, like you feel like that is a starter's arsenal there, especially with a flip-in curveball.
Yeah, and that with the fact that the fastball generates some good carry and whiff in the zone, I think it's going to differentiate enough from that cutter. And then that's where it comes down to the execution, right? Like where sometimes when pitches overlap, it can be an asset if you're executing them well. If you're not, then it becomes a little bit more of a deficit because you're not getting away with your misses as much. But looking at the scatter plot, the cutter, I think, does have enough separation there. And then the slider is definitely a lot different than the cutter. It's more of a sweeper, to be honest. And then he's got the depthy curveball if he can find a little bit more of a feel for it. So Pecko, probably a guy that isn't far off from that 45 tier if he can maintain that in that uptick and sit closer to the mid-90s. 11, Anthony Huezo. I think Huezo, right?
No idea.
We're going to go with Huezo. He's probably been one of the breakout guys in this system. And my friend Jeff Ponce at Baseball America actually wrote, I think, a piece on Huezo and how he's been kind of that unsung breakout guy in the system that could be a name to watch heading into 2026 with the year that he has had. 12th round pick in 2023. He hits the living crap out of the ball. And it's a similar story with him, just trying to get that raw power and the game power after a couple kind of, I would say, disappointing years out of the gate, or at least a disappointing first year out of the gate. He has mashed his way off the complex, got up to low A. There were some struggles here and there in low A, but I thought also flashed some really good things and ended up turning in a good finish and a solid overall season, hit 301 in those 22 games at low A, which is encouraging given the fact that he was striking out a lot. He cut the strikeout rate down in low A. Exit velocities are great. 90th percentile of 107 miles per hour at 19 years old and a hard hit rate of 45%. And he gets into it to the pull side really well. Swinging and missing at spin is definitely something that stands out, but he's 19 years old and kind of broke out and having this year where he pushed his way off the complex. I think there's a lot of encouraging things to see here and has a chance to maybe stick in center. Worst case, he moves to a corner. He'll be solid there, but the raw power here is big time.
What are these transaction logs for him? I mean, have you seen like
I don't know why they do that or why they did that. It's bizarre.
What is this? Like, it's 40 games at the complex as an 18-year-old in 2024. Okay. And then he skips low A Fayetteville. He goes right to Asheville at the high A level, 7 games in high A, and then 1 game at the end of the year with double A Corpus Christi. That's as an 18-year-old. So 40 at the complex, 7 in high A, 1 in double A. And then this year, 43 at the complex again. He repeated the complex after struggling there mightily. 22 games in low A, and then 2 games in triple A. Like, is he an org guy?
That's the craziest part. Do you want me to break your brain even more?
Yeah.
So 2024, July 24th was his final Florida Complex League game. And I would venture to say, based on the way that he played that year as a 12th round pick, he probably was viewed as an org guy.
Yeah, I mean, it was a 5 OPS.
He doesn't play for 3 weeks. Then he plays 1 game for double A Corpus Christi on October 11th, 2024. That's it. Then he plays
on September or on August 11th.
August 11th, excuse me. Sorry. So 3 weeks later. Then 3 weeks after that is when he starts that 7-game high A stint in September for Asheville. But things change, right? When you have a really good year, we talked about it with Peyton Eels, right? Especially if you're a young guy, I think you can absolutely shift your perspective on you. That's why you talk about baseball being a meritocracy as much as any sport. He does that here. The AAA stint came early in the year. So he didn't have enough time to shake the Ord guy moniker, probably. 20 games in at the complex, when he's repeating it, he had an 800 OPS. I'm sure that wasn't enough to move them. They needed somebody in AAA. I'm sure he's happy to go up there at that point. And he goes and plays 2 games in Reno. He didn't see the field in one of them, or he only went in as a defensive replacement one of them, and then he got one at bat in another, and he actually picked up a hit, which is awesome. Then he goes back down to the Florida Complex League and finishes out the season. But finishing out the season from there was where I think he started to turn some heads. Where 24 games, he puts up an 885 OPS, starts flashing some EVs. Maybe in AAA, they call back and say, hey, we really like the way this kid was going about his business. His BP was impressive, whatever. And once that complex season winds down, they send him up to low A. And in low A, 22 games, he hits 301 with a 772 OPS. And that's, I guess, effectively the journey of how quickly you can take yourself from org guy to guy we value in the org. Those journeys are always fun.
That is a fascinating backstory there.
But I can guarantee you now, like, guy that wouldn't have ranked in the top 50 last year, this is a guy that the Astros internally have in the top 15 in their system now. That's just amazing how fast those things can change. So, really cool. And the raw power is legit. Let's see if he can hit enough. And the low A stint was encouraging.
Yep.
Kevin Alvarez is a guy that I know a lot of people are excited about. Big ticket IFA guy, $2 million in 2025. And he's turned in some good results. The thing with Alvarez for me is it's about as raw as it gets, right? So it's really hard for me to project. The positive side is he does seem to be putting bat on ball a good amount, and he's 6'4", 185 pounds as an outfielder. So you have a lot of physical projection here as well. The thing is I talk about this with folks in the industry all the time is, yeah, you can say, oh, well, I can dream on this and I can see this. But when you look at the swing mechanics of so many of these DSL guys, you just don't know who's going to figure it out swing wise. Like you could say, if he does, it's going to look like this. And he has the components to be able to have a really powerful swing, but he may just never figure it out mechanically. So you don't know. But you try to figure out where it fits in there. And I think the chance of it working out and the upside here versus how far he still is off is why he slots in kind of at this 10 spot here. There's a lot that needs to still be refined. I know I have it broken down here of like some specific things. Yeah, it was the counter rotation where he will really turn his way inward. And then the barrel just has to travel so far to get back around. And as a longer levered guy and not quite as twitchy yet, it can just cause his contact point to be quite deep. And as a result, not elevating as much, it's going to hamper some of the power. But if he adds more strength, which is presumably going to be the case here, and it just continues to mature, the fact that he has that frame and the bat to ball and the approach has been there, for the most part, he's a fun template to build on.
He checks my favorite box in the DSL, which is you walk more than you strike out. When you see a fully filled out Kevin Alvarez and he makes his way to double AAA, like what kind of player do you see? Because it seems like he's well-rounded enough to be 50s across the board, or a certain tool could stick out at that point.
Yeah, and that's the other part. It's so hard to know exactly what that's going to look like. Is he going to skew more towards the hit over power or the power over hit? I would venture to say, just based on, and he's 17 years old, based on the way that he moves at this point and the way that he swings the bat, I think it's going to be a little bit more hit over power. And that's where I put it on the future grades there. That's just more how I see it, where yes, he's a bigger guy, but it's really good barrel control and it's above average hit and maybe fringy power. But who knows, with so much more room in his frame to add strength, there could be more in there. Ultimately, probably slides over to a corner as he physically matures.
Gotcha.
Number 9, let's talk about a big leaguer, AJ Blubaugh. He has turned himself into a nice big league arm, and he's turned in good results, I think, for a lot of his professional career. But there was, I'm trying to remember, like there was a rocky spot in, what was it, 23 maybe? But 2024 was really good. Turned in his best season of his career in a hitter-friendly PCL. Then the command took a bit of a step back in 2025, but it seems like he's regained that. And since he's got up to the big leagues, man, and they've used him kind of in this swingman role, He was an opener last time out and dominated against the Rangers in a big game for them yesterday as we're recording this. 7 appearances, 1.13 ERA. That's 16 innings, a 21% strikeout, or 21 strikeouts, 5 walks. It's a 34% strikeout rate. His last time out against the Rangers as an opener, 3 innings, 2 hits, no runs, 1 walk, 7 Ks. So what I like about him is in these shorter spurts, that fastball's ticking up and it's a lot more effective because the shape's not great. It's not bad. It's just the increase of mile per hour or two is definitely going to push it to the above average territory. And then he's been able to just hone in on that changeup and sweeper, and he's dominated with those pitches since getting up there. He seems like a guy that you could end up plugging back into the back of a rotation, but is clearly very comfortable being moved around.
I like the Swiss Army knife thing a lot. In terms of what he does on the mound, there's enough weird mechanically to complement the legitimate stuff for him. The stuff is real, dude. He threw against the Marlins in Miami, and I was kind of floored. But like, I'm looking at this sequence here. He throws an inning on September 2nd against the Yankees. Okay, scoreless inning. He punched out 2, allowed a base hit, didn't walk anyone. On 2 days rest, he throws again in Arlington on September 5th. 2 2/3, 1 hit shutout ball. He K'd 3. Then it's 3 days of rest. He comes back, 3 1/3 no hit, 4 punch outs. And then he gets 2 days rest. He throws an inning. And then he gets 3 days rest, and it's 3 innings of 2 hit shutout ball with 7 Ks, like you pointed out, against the Texas Rangers. I mean, it doesn't really matter if you give him 2 days, if you give him 4 days. Like,
You can't teach that really either.
What?
You can't teach that really either.
You can't. No, I mean, like, there has to be a certain element of F it, I'm here for the team, that those guys have to thrive in that role. And AJ Blubaugh is thriving in that role. It really feels like he's pitching with the sole intention of getting the Astros to the postseason.
Yep. And I love that. I love it. And I totally agree. It's you get up from AAA, and that's what these guys say. And usually the guys that just got up from AAA, they really mean it. And he's doing that. And what I like too is in the shorter spurts, when we saw him in with proper rest or a few extra days rest, when he's been going in relief and a couple days rest and not throwing multiple innings, that fastball was closer to 96, 97. And if he's there, I mean, that's all of a sudden you can start maybe putting that in the 7th inning. So he's a guy that I think if you're properly spacing him out and managing his workload like a traditional reliever, I think can pitch the 7th if this continues. But if you're moving him around a little bit, still a guy that could probably do that, but also is a guy that can open up for you too. I do think ultimately the stuff has become good enough to where I think you try him as a 5-starter next year if you need it. I mean, I don't have their entire pitching situation next year off the dome, but if you do need a 5-starter, I think that's where he could be most valuable for you. But I do think this Swiss Army knife type is going to work quite well too as a fallback.
It seems like they could spend a little bit in free agency to go get a 5-starter. I feel like the Swiss Army knife, frankly, is a role that they would love to have from him. Or it'd be Brown, Valdez, Javier, I guess Luis Garcia.
Well, I think Fromber's probably gone.
Oh, yeah, Fromber is gone. So Brown, Javier, Luis Garcia, if he bounces back from elbow discomfort, but like Ronel Blanco is missing at least half the year with TJ. Wisniewski's missing at least half the year. He could absolutely start games.
Well, and the next guy we're going to talk about has a case, but he's going to have to throw more strikes, and he's definitely behind Blubaugh in terms of just the pecking order in there. And I think now there's another guy with Blubaugh, the way that he has thrown of late in these different roles could probably be put ahead of the next guy, but the ceiling is just higher on the next guy. And when we made this list, didn't have a few just dominant outings here from Blubaugh to reference towards. But yeah, you look at Jason Alexander and what he's done, and Colton Gordon. I think Blubaugh has a chance to be one of the better options for them. But of course, you're going to get Arrighetti back. Who knows when they'll get Wisniewski back? They've got irons in the fire, which is interesting. And then of course, you always have Lance McCullers. I shouldn't say always, unfortunately. Number 8, Miguel Ullola. And this was the player that we famously misidentified as Rule 5 eligible last year and said, like, oh, if he's Rule 5 eligible, he's gone. He wasn't, and that's why he wasn't gone, and that's why he wasn't added to the 40, because I assure you the Astros will add him to the 40 after this year. And if they don't, I would be shocked. Ullola's execution has taken a step back this year. There's no doubt about that. But his fastball is very similar to Christian Javier's. And I know that's what the Astros love.
Yeah.
It's dominant. And even though he's been a tick below this year of where he was at last year, that's the only reason why I put 60 present. It was a 70 last year, and it's kind of ticked a little bit closer to it was a 70 last year. It's ticked a little bit closer to a 60 this year because of just execution and I would say the velocity just dropping a tick and a half. But this fastball, man, opponents are hitting 144 against it this year. In total, opponents are hitting 187 against him in a very hitter-friendly PCL. And really just the biggest challenge for him just continues to be him. And it's been more walks this year, 16% walk rate after a 14% walk rate last year. He may end up having to slide into the bullpen, but where that fastball would play and you could put him at leverage. But if this guy can just execute if it's 40 grade command, he could be a volatile back end starter that just misses a ton of bats with his fastball. Something sometimes just clicks with these Verdi fastball guys and they throw enough strikes. But at the end of the day, you're getting a 70 grade fastball, above average curveball, and a slider that looks like it could be at least average or better. That's an arm I'm always going to be intrigued by, but he's got to throw more strikes.
So I like the idea of Blubaugh starting games over Ullola next year. Christian Javier in 2021, 36 appearances, just 9 of which were starts. But he threw 101 in a third innings, punched out 130, did walk 4.5, 5 hitters per 9, but had a 3.55 ERA. And then they put him in the rotation in 22, and 150 innings later, he's got a 2.5 ERA. Like, they can absolutely use 2026 as a bridge year where Ullola is throwing in the big leagues because there's nothing left for him to prove. He's better than pretty much everybody he sees in AAA at this point. Throw him in the big leagues, get him 100 innings in like this bullpen spot start type role that you had Javier go through in 2021, and then you can shove him into the rotation in 2027.
Yep. I like that. And if something clicks that year, it's what just happens with so many different arms all the time, then you thrust them into a potentially different role. The encouraging angle of this is last 5 starts at the AAA level, 9% walk rate. So you're hoping that that's a trend heading into the offseason and next year. Yep. Number 7, Joseph Sullivan. This is a tooled up outfielder. The problem is I have little confidence that he is going to hit enough. And it's similar to the conversation that we were having with Zach Cole. With Sullivan, though, you get a little bit more time to see, I think, if he can make more contact. He's 2 years younger, but also elite plate discipline. And he's a player that really kind of breaks my brain. So if you have 30 hit tool, 60 plate discipline, plus raw power that really manifests more in above average game power, and you're a plus runner, does that all work enough? Or does the 30 hit tool undermine too much?
It's
like fascinating.
Yeah, I feel like the plate discipline would help curb the lack of hit tool. Like, that is the carrying trait here, you would think.
Yes. And can it carry it enough at the big league level? I think yes, in a bulk platoon role. I think you don't put this guy up against a lefty. He's hitting 168 against lefties this year in high A and double A. And the strikeout rate is 30% compared to 27% against righties. Secondaries blow him up at point, and that's my concern. But he is so elite at recognizing them, especially from the from right-handers. So if he's a mistake hitter who can play center field, I think it's more likely in a good corner and an average center field. But if he's a mistake hitter that can potentially play average center field, really good defense in a corner, can steal a ton of bags. How many bags does he have this year? Do you have that in front of you?
I don't, but I can get it very quickly.
There's a lot to like there. I just have some concerns about the swing mechanics, and I think they could rear their head a little bit more. Like, we're going to talk about Jacob Melton, and Melton, his swing works because he's such a good athlete. It works well enough to produce in double A and even triple A. But then when he gets to the big leagues, he's just completely overmatched. And I think Sullivan has some similar mechanical deficiencies that may result in him producing well in double A, triple A, and then having kind of a day of reckoning at the big league level.
42 for 51 in the stolen base department.
Yeah. So I think this is a good big league role player, but we're seeing it in real time with Melton. He's not hitting enough when he gets up there to make his other tools valuable. Melton hits the crap out of the ball. Melton runs really well, and he can play a good outfield. It's a very similar archetype. The difference is Sullivan's, I think, plate discipline is much better, but Melton's bat to ball is better. So it's going to be fascinating to see which archetype can work. The OPS against secondaries was in the low 600s with a 60% contact rate, and tends to pull out or sell out to the pull side. So that can result in him kind of leaving that spin. And I think that's why left on left, he's really struggles, but he can be better against righties. I'm very excited to see what it all looks like. And I think he's still a fun upside player that if it works out enough, he can be a bulk platoon guy that can play all three outfield spots.
Cool.
Number 6 is Ryan Forcucci. We have not seen him throw yet professionally, but he was a guy that had some first round buzz as he was starting to really throw the ball well. He threw really well in 2023 at UC San Diego and then came out just shoving in 2024 through his first handful of starts before unfortunately undergoing Tommy John surgery. Not a lot of video and not a lot of data even available at UC San Diego there in those starts. So Forcucci was a guy that a lot of teams didn't really have much confidence in what intel they were able to have when they were looking at the 2024 draft. Still, the Astros took him in the 3rd round, and we'll just have to wait and see. I watched all of those starts from 2024. Very athletic on the mound, and I think a very high floor arm because you have a fastball with some good run and ride with good athleticism, and then you have a slider that looks like an above average pitch. He flashed a changeup that looks like it can be an average 3rd offering, and the command's above average. Feel good about this guy landing as a back end of the rotation starter. But the fun part is, what if he returns with the fastball ticked up? That's possible. Yeah. And I'm hoping for that because then that pushes the ceiling maybe a little bit higher. But he has a good chance of landing as a back end of the rotation starter.
Only thing I have to add, went to UC San Diego in La Jolla, 6th spot to go to college. Hoping for the best for him.
Yeah. And we'll see. I thought maybe he would be an Arizona Fall League guy. We haven't done the rosters episode yet. I don't think I saw him on there. So we assume he'll make his pro debut in 2026. We're going to get to the top 5, which starts with Anderson Brito in a moment. Before that, our last break. So this dude is electric. Absolutely electric. Another arm that hit the IL June 21st. We did not give, still undisclosed. From what I was able to gather, it's a shoulder issue. Don't know the severity or anything like that, but let's err on the positive side and assume that he'll be back and ready to go for the start of next year. If that's the case, he's very clearly, I think, the highest upside pitching prospect that they've got here because it is an electrifying arm. And this is another later bloomer. 2023 IFA $10,000 signing. They didn't even allow him to debut until 2024. He was in like a strength program. Wow. Like, you're not even going to throw yet. And then he debuted in 2024, showed some good things, and then really saw his velocity tick up to the mid 90s from the mid 90s to the upper 90s in 2025, where before he went down, fastball averaged 96.5 this year. That with great life to it. It looks like a plus or better heater. And then off of that, a downer curveball. The shapes are inconsistent. Remember, he has not thrown a lot of professional innings. So he's just still trying to find that feel and that confidence and consistency with the throw. The cutter looks like it could be a good bridge pitch. The splitter has flashed average or better. It's a very fascinating pitch mix headlined by a potentially elite fastball for a 21-year-old who hasn't thrown a lot of innings. We're just waiting to see what the injury situation is.
What is the next step for him? And don't say strike throwing, say something else that isn't strike throwing.
Yeah, because it's not the 13% walk rate. I would say consistent shapes, because when I watched him, it wasn't, the curveball wasn't the same throw every time. The fastball wasn't the same throw every time. And so I think he's still trying to repeat his release point for those different offerings and just trying to streamline that delivery a little bit more. And I know that overlaps with command, but not necessarily from a walk perspective. I think that curveball should have way better whiff rates, but it didn't because the shapes were inconsistent. Sometimes it was more slurvy. Sometimes it was bigger. And I think that was just from an inconsistent throw. So I would say more consistent shapes would be the big thing to watch. No one hit him this year. It's a 585 OPS. And when you got a plus to potentially plus heater and a plus curveball in a trio of secondaries that all have at least a chance to be average, I don't have much concern about the stuff. It's just how consistent can he be with the shapes of the stuff and then executing it.
Cool.
Number 4 is the aforementioned Jacob Melton. Can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Pull up, before you do it, have we talked about Jacob Melton's big league ground ball rate?
No, we haven't.
Take a guess.
60?
Can you go pull it up while I talk about Jacob Melton?
Yeah.
So if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know I love the tools and the data. He's a data darling. And he hasn't strayed from that at all. I mean, it has been really fun to watch. Yeah, look at that face. So what's the ground ball rate?
Yeah, it's hard to tap into your data darling upside when you have an 82% ground ball rate. And that's not like a small sample. That's 74 plate appearances. 82% ground ball rate.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because in AAA or in the minor leagues just overall this year, I don't know if there's a rehab game mixed in there. 30 games, 40% ground ball rate. He has a 933 OPS. The path, man. Well, I'll start with the good. Hits the living crap out of the ball. It's an EV90 this year of 108 miles per hour. That's including the big league stint with struggles and a hard hit rate of 53%. He's always been putting up crazy numbers like that. He can run really well, and he can play a good center field and a great corner. He recognizes spin pretty well, at least in the minor leagues. And the contact rates have been good enough. Then he gets to the big leagues. His path, the bat flattens out, and it almost is like he's sweeping it through the zone. And that combined with he's also a big counter rotator, sinks into that backside, I think too much into the quad, and then rotates out and really sweeps the bat behind him. And I think that results in a really deep contact point. And when you have a really deep contact point, there's nowhere for that ball to go but on the ground or maybe flared behind you. And so everything is on the ground. Watching the big league at bats, to me, it looked like pitchers were throwing from 55 feet for him. Like that's how it seemed like it was getting on him so quickly. I can never quit this guy at 25 years old because if he makes a mechanical adjustment, we've seen him kind of take the same swing for multiple years now. If he makes a mechanical adjustment, the sky is the limit. And this is the type of player where a team gives up on him. He goes somewhere else, something clicks, and he's so good that people are like, how did the other team not know what they had? They knew what they had. They just didn't know. They gave up on it ever really being able to happen. And that's the thing with Melton is I'm just looking at, he has one of the deepest contact points in, I think, all of professional baseball. And I think it's because of the path and the way that his lower half works, where it's just so hard to get the barrel out to where you need it to be for that. I think on Savant, they call it like the intercept point or whatever. I just call it like the contact point. It's so hard to get it out to where you need it to be to do damage.
Yeah, I mean, you say that he's one of those guys that like you're terrified of going to another organization because if he figures it out, like you're going to be saying, "Oh, why didn't we have that click?" You got to give it like at least 2-3 more tries in the big leagues.
Yep. Yeah, he hasn't had enough runway yet.
No chance. But like, obviously, you need to see an offseason of a serious change at the major league level because these pitchers are too good and they will exploit something like that. If it's as simple as intercept point or contact point, like guys will figure out what in their arsenal will get you to hit the ball on the ground, especially when there is an 82% sample of you doing it.
Exactly. I mean, he's the kind of guy too where a catcher could be looking at the scouting report of a veteran catcher, and it may say one thing, and they'll see the swing path, and they'll say, "Bust it in right here," and it'll work. And I think that's the thing. But since he's got back to AAA, he's been pulling the ball hard in the air a lot better. And as I'm looking at just some of this video, less counter rotated, definitely seems to be a bit shorter to the ball. But I think this will be something in the offseason that he can clean up. You give him, I agree, 2-3 more chances because the tools are too good as a guy that could be how many stolen bases the last 2 years? Do you still have it up?
A ton. I don't have it up right now.
But it's above average defense in center. He can absolutely motor, and there's a potential for 20 plus homers. That's just a really good player. if it clicks.
And Jacob Melton in 2023, 46 stolen bases, 30 for 34 last year. And this year, between AAA and the big leagues in 60 games, he's got 16.
Yeah, it's always been pretty efficient.
Yeah.
Number 3, Walker Janek. I like Janek because of the floor. And the offensive outcomes are not the most exciting. This is one of the best defensive catchers in the minor leagues. We talk about Joe Mack, and I kept trying to think who are some guys with legitimate prospect intrigue that could rival Joe Mack defensively. Here's one of them. And offensively, there's not a ton to get excited about, but he has added some power since last year, and I think that's helped. Even if he could be a 10 to 15 home run guy, I think you were looking at that as maybe 15 was looking a little far-fetched last year. Now adding a bit more impact, 15 homers seems more attainable. I still think the hit tool is going to be fringy, and the plate discipline, he's pretty aggressive. So if he can hit those 15 home runs, that's going to help. He's going to get you all the war from the defensive ability. And in a world where we see Patrick Bailey as a primary catcher and no one blinks because he's going to still back into 4 WAR every year, I don't think Janek's going to be that good, but you never know. No one thought Patrick Bailey was going to be that good. What I do know is he will be good enough to be a backup catcher, and the offense is at least good enough to be a backup catcher. It could come along further. He's still 22 years old. He hasn't turned 23 for another week, and this was a step in the right direction offensively, especially from the air pull perspective. He also gives you some value with his legs, which I think is just a nice little added on when we're trying to squeeze out every drop here. But he's thrown out 30+% of base stealers. He's a great receiver. He's a good blocker. And maybe he can find a way to push closer to 20 home runs as he gets a little bit more grandfathered into pro ball. And then at that point, I think you feel really good about him at least being an average primary catcher.
And you love what he can do from a team identity perspective for the Houston Astros, because if he is the backup to Yainer Diaz for the foreseeable future, you feel awesome about that, because Diaz is a guy that can swing it with the best of them at that position, but will struggle a little bit defensively. And your spell for certain arms, like, hey, say 2 of the 5 want to see Walker Janek behind the dish, right? 2 of the 5 in your starting rotation. Then Diaz can DH 2 of the 5 turns, and he can DH 40% of the time, and it's okay. Victor Caratini has been an amazing backup to Yainer Diaz, but Caratini is a free agent at season's end. So you could buy a little time with a 1-year deal, and then Janek could take over that, 40% of the time catcher role in 2027.
And he's the kind of guy too, where if Yainer goes down, he's your primary catcher. You feel
fine,
still pretty good about that. Like that's a tweener type, right? Where, okay, we're good through this stretch. And now we're getting a different value in different ways. And maybe you still value Yainer more, but you're able to still fill in some other gaps in that regard. 30 for 32 in the stolen base department as a catcher is pretty awesome too.
That's awesome.
So it just shows you the instincts and the sneaky athleticism there too.
Yeah.
Number 2 is Brice Matthews, who got up to the big leagues, then sent back down, showed some good things. Another guy that I do think needs a little bit of a swing retool if he's going to tap into all of his potential. If you combine the minor leagues and the major leagues this year, Matthews has an in-zone contact rate of 71% and an overall contact rate of 63%. That's where my big concern is. I don't care as much about the in-zone whiff. I care more about the lack of adjustability. 29% out-of-zone contact rate. It feels like he kind of has one swing for one spot. The good news is when he makes contact, it's hard and it's in the air to the pull side usually, and that's why he can hit 30 home runs. The question is he going to hit enough to get to those 30 home runs? It's a 30 hit tool, but he does have really good plate discipline, which hedges that. It's plus swing decisions, and it's above average power, and he's a plus runner. So the tools all work there, where another player that if the hit tool stalls out, seems like a good utility type. Worth noting, they've been giving him some run in center field for Sugarland over the last few games here of the season. Of the last week, here's the game log. Center field, second base, center field, second base, center field. I like him a lot more as, let's say he turns into an average center fielder. Well, all of a sudden, that's a lot less pressure on the bat. Because second base, you're this offensive-minded second baseman who's going to be average at best defensively. He can't really play short. The arm's too short. Now, if he can play center field, even at an average ability, being able to just go back and forth gives you some unique versatility there. I'm fascinated by that. But my question with him is just whether he's going to be able to make enough contact. There's some late hand movement, and I think the top, his torso and his lower half can kind of get out of sorts, and then he just ends up looking pretty rushed in the box.
And you want to give him that opportunity to make that change this offseason, right? Like, if it was a little bit better in terms of the swing and miss department in the big leagues, you would say, oh, you know what, maybe he doesn't, and maybe, it takes more failure for him to possibly make a change. But 5 for 35 with 18 punch outs and 40 plate appearances, like that's almost a 50% K rate in your big league sample. So I think Brice Matthews knows that he's got to make a change at some point, and in some way. So that's really cool. If he does settle into being an okay center fielder and he brings up that second base center field type, like what separates him from what people thought Chris Taylor was before he signed that, $60-70 million extension? Like that's a hell of a baseball player.
Exactly. And the difference would just be getting into it and not missing the mistake pitches and doing it consistently. And I think he's got time to do that. He's 23 years old.
He hasn't in Sugarland at this point.
He wasn't ready for the big leagues. I'm glad he got called up. I'm always going to support that. But when we talked about it, I said, oh, this is going to be a big test. They needed someone to plug in. He had some big swings for them. And then it got difficult. I think ultimately it's been a good year for him, but I don't know if he was ready to make an impact yet at the big league level. The other thing that I like is the fallback here for him. Much better chance if he's not going to be able to hit righties to just hit lefties. He's a 902 OPS, even if you include the big league stint against lefties. That strikeout rate drops to 27%. And I think if you focus on the non-big league ABs against lefties, which is 118 plate appearances against left-handed pitching this year in AAA, 24.6% K rate is a 965 OPS. So at the very least, you got a short platoon guy who can run and maybe give you some versatility if he can play center field.
Yep.
And number one is Xavier Neyens. It's just a theme, and it's so funny now after writing up this whole system and then seeing the team that ended up taking Neyens here. Like, of course they did. Neyens fell in the draft, and I need to update that. I should say 2025 was this year's draft. Neyens fell in the draft because there was a stretch in the summer circuit where the whiff was as prominent as I think anybody in the class, and maybe anybody that had first round intrigue in the class in a while. But I've also seen Neyens take some swings, man, that few, if anybody, in the class was capable of taking in terms of just the damage, the athleticism, the lower half adjustability, the bat speed, and just, I think, the violence. It's controlled violence. But I think at points it wasn't as controlled as it needs to be. Neyens is also a guy that comes from, I think, an environment in high school where he wasn't playing the best competition. And I think he got thrown into a big test in the summer circuit and battle a little bit. Another player that mechanically, I think, could clean things up. He starts upright, his hands are a little bit more than shoulder width apart, and then he really pushes them up with a sizable leg kick, and his elbow hikes all the way up, and there's this big leg kick, and it just seems like there's a lot pulling him in different directions. And I think he was able to get away with that in his competition that he was facing in Washington.
Yeah.
Because ball's floating in there, you're taking BP almost. And not to disparage, but that's a lot of the competition that he was facing.
Right.
80 miles an hour when you have disruptive mechanics is not going to affect you. It affected him in the summer circuit a lot more. I don't see why he can't clean those things up before he makes. And I think there's a reason why he didn't make his pro debut yet. I think they said, hey, who cares? We don't need you to play yet. Let's work on cleaning up these mechanics and set you up for success. And I think even just subtle changes are going to help him because this is elite bat speed and whip.
Is this a third baseman for sure? Or is this you're going to try it at shortstop and then probably by the time he gets to the show, it's as a third baseman?
They're going to try it. And I think with more reps, he's a sneaky good athlete. He's got a good arm. I know that he was a prospect on the mound. So it's a easy plus arm. I know Tyler Jennings felt like he's got a shot to stick it short, but I ultimately think probably moves over to third where he plays potentially well above average defense.
It's funny, the offensive profile you describe is just a third baseman. Like it's almost never a shortstop, right? It's like, big man hammered, lower quality pitching and, Washington State in high school. Like I just immediately think third base.
Yeah, no, that does check out. And I think as he fills out more, he's 6'4", 210. He's probably just going to mature and maybe slow his step. It probably makes sense there, but he'll play quite well there. Even if it's a 40 hit tool, this guy's just the potential to be a well above average third baseman. Because I see the potential for plus game power. He's also selective at the plate. That Tyler had noted, maybe sometimes passive. Fine, we can ramp it back up. That's fine. And I think when you see the type of power that he can possess, and I already posted, I think there was some like 112 pluses in the summer circuit. I'm really excited for his pro debut, but there's always a chance that he just is not able to hit enough. I think being able to clean up some of those mechanical things will help him a lot. And you can't teach the bat speed and that lower half adjustability that I think ultimately will prevail. The Astros, they are not deterred by whiff, man. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, man. No, there's no doubt about
it. They have no concern if you are a potential 30 hit tool. They're still going to take a shot on you. And I think this is the type of player to give it a shot with, though. And I'm excited to see what it can look like. That's it for the farm system breakdowns here. We're going to be focusing on the updates next. We're almost done with the AL West, completely updating those, of course, because the last two AL West we just did here. So Rangers are the last one to update there. And we'll probably knock out the updates by division here. We'll keep you posted on that front. Heat sheet coming up end of the week. And then we'll keep you briefed in the Discord. I'm letting everybody know when I finish updating each system. So we'd love to have you in the Discord. The link to join that is in the episode description. Best way to support us here with all of the free content. And it's also a lot of fun. Love hanging out with you in there. But we'll announce the complete 30 when it's all done and then do the prospect team rankings there. But if you're in the Discord, I'll be letting you know one at a time. But obviously, when we do these episodes, you will know that that team has been updated on that master sheet that you can find on justbaseball.com. As always, thank you for listening. Look forward to talking prospects with you tomorrow.